In this brand new quick and impromptu episode of the Toolbox, we'll take a look at what happened with the latest drop, Bootstrap 5.1. Stay tuned. All right, so I totally wasn't expecting this today. And as a matter of fact, I just finished a brand new course on Bootstrap updates and migration. And when I dropped in today to the website, guess what I found? In the blog, which is actually the best place for you to find any sort of new changes to the platform. You can see that they just dropped a Bootstrap 5.1 release. The latest version before this was like a 5.0.2. And so far, Bootstrap had really very minor changes. So let's hope that I have my audio all set up here. Let's see, audio. So let me know AirPods. Oh yeah, okay. So you should be able to hear me with my AirPods. I don't have my whole system even all set up. So let me know if you can't hear me. That could be useful. Anyways, they just released Bootstrap 5.1. Before that, Bootstrap really didn't have that much new stuff. There's only like a couple of components that they really changed. They added an accordion component, for example. And then they had an off-screen canvas component. And that was pretty much it. There was a lot of really good changes. So for example, the RTL features, which were right to left versions of all of the versions of Bootstrap. And essentially it allowed you to use Bootstrap with other languages. But as a byproduct, one of the things that it did was change all of the classes that you had to use for things like padding, as well as margins. And so that makes it a real challenge to update your old websites, but it's a really good thing. So it was a necessary change that I thought was pretty good. But as I was going through that course, I realized, there isn't really that much that is new. There's a lot of like minor changes here and there. So it's nice to see that they're working towards some new things. And the biggest announcement is this CSS Grid change. Now, this isn't going to have a huge effect on you. So if you're upgrading from Bootstrap 4 or Bootstrap 5, actually, CSS Grid is really something that is right now in an experimental phase. So essentially what it does is it allows you to change the default grid, which is normally Flexbox based in Bootstrap, into a grid based on CSS Grid. So there's not really that much to do except that if you want to use the new grid, you have to be using the SaaS version of Bootstrap. So you're not going to be able to just go replace your Bootstrap code, your Bootstrap link if you're using just a regular version of Bootstrap. It's something that you have to turn on a variable in order to take advantage of. So notice right now, by default, this variable called enable grid classes is set to false. Oops, let's turn that off. You can see that it says enable grid classes false, and you need to reset that to true. So you need to download the SaaS version of Bootstrap, make sure you know how to do that, and then turn on that variable or turn that variable from the default, which is false, to true. And then once everything is recompiled, then you'll have access to the new classes. They're doing this for a couple of reasons: to make sure that people will be comfortable with the change, to make sure that it doesn't break anything. I think they haven't quite figured out how CSS Grid sort of integrates properly. Do people want it to replace the current grid? Or do they want it to be like an addition to the grid? So before the grid, it's a 12-column grid. And I'm not even sure what they did before Flexbox. I guess it was just, I don't know, margins and floats and some crazy magic. But with Bootstrap 4, we had this like really pretty easy to figure out Flexbox-based grid. Now, since 5, they've been experimenting with a CSS Grid version of it, which I think all that it's going to do is just allow you to sort of lay things out instead of by using the row class that you normally see. You could see here. I don't know if I can zoom in. Let's see. I don't think I have my zoom in even on, but essentially, let's see. You might be able to click on this and you can see the CSS Grid. So what you would do here is you would replace instances of the row class with the grid class. That would set things to display grid. You did see in before 5.1, there was a new display grid class, and all it allowed you to do was to create very simple, like 2-dimensional kind of grid, height by width. So you'll be able to create a grid and apply a certain amount of paddings to the elements between the grids, the grid items. So it didn't do that much, but the fact that they are moving perhaps towards letting you just lay everything out with grid could be a very big change. And I think that they want your, they want to hear what people think. Should it just go and have Bootstrap completely be grid based? What that will do, I mean, grid allows you to do a lot of crazy things that are not really things, for that you do in classic websites. So I think it's a good addition, and it's really good that they have made it just something experimental. Really smart for them to do it only in Sass, because that means it's not going to break anything, and there's not going to be that many sites that are going to be using this. So it's really for super pro users that are comfortable with Sass and want to experiment with doing things with grid. Of course, I'll be doing that. Maybe I'll do another Toolbox episode on just what happens if you take a site and you modify it or change it to have a grid layout. So my website is raybo.org. It's currently done in Bootstrap 5. I don't know if I think I may have upgraded to 5.0 something, but pretty simple layout. Maybe that'll be a good thing for me to just go through and, it does use the Sass version of Bootstrap, update it and see what it does and what happens. That might be another good episode. Let me know if you want to be a part of that. Okay, so otherwise, let's see. So so Flex utilities don't affect the CSS Grid columns in the same way. The gap property currently exists in actually 5.1, because this is not turned on by default or previous versions. So this is kind of strange. Unlike rows, grids have no negative margins, and so you can't use margin utilities to change the grid gutters. That's why there's a new class for taking care of that. So very interesting. Yeah, I wonder what it will do if I just completely switch. You can see here pretty easy. So it's also this language that's actually very familiar to any Bootstrap user. You already know how to create a column, and then you specify like, column, and then the breakpoint, and then how many parts of the column you want it to take over. So gcall4 seems pretty easy to sort of get used to. It'll be good to see whether or not this has a huge impact. And then there are responsive options. So if you take a look at the language that they're using for the grid, honestly, it's not going to be that much of a deal for you to learn it. I think that it'll be interesting to see what sort of an impact it would have on when you migrate a site. This is probably the hardest version to migrate to, just because of the RTL changes. The changing of, like, for example, if you say, like, if you want to add some padding to the left side on non-RTL Bootstrap, you have to say start instead of left and end instead of right. And so what that does is just about any class that uses the word left or right is now start and end. Kind of a little bit weird to think about it as well. So let's see, grid items will automatically wrap to the next line. If there's no more room, that's sort of the same thing that it did before. There's start classes, so you can like offset things. That's how you offset things generally in Bootstrap. So you can offset things by certain column numbers. If there are no classes, then it still considers it, I guess, a 12-column grid, which is good. Gaps appear to be just a weird default. So this looks like quite a lot more room. I think the room between different columns before, I think, was 30 pixels, and I think this looks a little bit bigger to me. So it's like 15 and 15 for each side. And let's see, nesting, override the default number of columns. Oh, okay, so you actually get access to a variable, a local CSS variable that lets you modify the number of columns inside one of the grids, which is pretty cool. Again, interesting to see how this kind of change will be implemented. Let's see. Looks like there's actually a bunch of variables that lets you define how things within the grid columns work. That's actually pretty awesome. And then it says immediate children elements of grid are grid items, so that it will be sized specifically. So I guess inside the columns you won't need to add the G column class. Notice that it just accepts just divs. That's pretty cool. So it looks like really smart changes as far as I can tell. Let's see. So you add rows by changing the placement of the columns. Okay, I'm not sure I can process that, but here is the example of how you add rows and columns. The gaps, it's something that's available now. You can get rid of the spacing between the columns, which is beautiful. So that's cool. Yeah, nothing else. I mean, I think it's going to be sort of easy to get used to, and it's going to give you some additional capabilities. Smart use of variables that will make things a little bit easier to take care of, I think. That's pretty fascinating. The other changes, let's take a look at some of the other things. So there's actually some new components. So OffCanvas is a current component, and now it has been expanded. So OffCanvas allows you to have side menus, the menus that come in from the side. Very cool component. I did an example, which you can see like in my code pen. So let me show you. See if I can log. I probably might need to like log into CodePen. That might not be the best thing. So let's see. I know what I can do. I can go to my slideshow for the course. So let's see, slides. Oops, slides. Boot 5 new. So this is how you get to the slides for this new course that I just recorded. And the OffCanvas component essentially lets you lets you create a component that appears, and this is actually not this is not a good place to go to. So this link is actually appears to be not quite updated. So that's a shame. So I'm not going to be able to show you, but you can actually see it here on here. So you can see that it allows you to create a side menu like this. You can control whether it appears on top, on the start, and the end, or the bottom. You can put whatever you want in here. It creates this background sort of overlay over the top of your item, and then it animates the menu from whichever side you apply, prevents this area from scrolling. The change in Bootstrap 5.1 is that now you are going to be able to add that to navbars, which is great. So before, you could put them anywhere. Now they have a specific expansion so that the menu that normally appears in the navigation can now be appearing in the sidebar. So if you remember, on a typical site, when you make it too small, if you code Bootstrap correctly, you get like this little sort of hamburger menu, kind of annoying. So in this new version, it looks like you can ask it to appear as an off-canvas menu, which kind of gives you a little bit of room back in the main layout. And I really love this new off-canvas menu. Pretty neat stuff. I think it's fantastic. So that's going to be exciting to see it do this, because I think it'll be much more meaningful than the hamburger menu and probably better usability. All right, placeholders. This is kind of a cool feature that I keep up with all the appearing changes, but occasionally they surprise me with something new. So this is cool. It's called placeholders, and it's a way to create temporary blocks instead of real content to show something still loading, or perhaps you know, maybe this could be a part of like your design process. So essentially you are, let's see, consider, so you can use placeholder language here to define items as not quite loading yet. And so this could be a class that you turn on and off. And instead of displaying the actual content, it'll display placeholder boxes like this until your content loads. And then all you do is just remove that class and display your content. So that is pretty cool. I wonder, I haven't had enough time to look at this one in order to tell you more about it, but you know, just keep up with me, and I'll probably do something else. So then we've added this official support for horizontally collapsing. So let's see, a toggle with collapse. That's pretty cool. Love this animation. So there's a collapse plugin that allows you, usually it was sort of like a drop down, but now notice that really sweet horizontal animation that I like. Let's see, I think it maybe, let's take a look at how you add this here. So you just add a class called collapse horizontal, and it's going to transition the width instead of the height. That is nice. I mean, it's a small little change, but a nice little addition. I welcome all of that stuff. And let's see, stack and vertical rule helper. So this is brand new. So let's see, create a vertical stack, rack the series of elements in Vstack and use gap utilities. So let's see, helper. So this is what they call a helper, which is like a very small piece of code that, let's see, that you use for very tiny things. So I'm not exactly sure what they're trying to do here with this stack. So let's go to the stack helper docs. Just, I guess, another sort of layout. It's called the B stack, where you can specify some gaps of items. I'm not sure. This looks like it could be used for navigation items. Not really sure how exciting this is. Oh, I get it. So you can, so this, it essentially allows a new type of layout, and it doesn't matter what kind of things you put in there. So you can create a VStack with, looks like, button groups. So perhaps some of the ways of laying out button groups might go away, because this is actually a lot quicker to do. You just sort of specify that this is going to be a group of vertical stacked items, how much room in between the two. And yeah, so you're controlling here how wide they are with automatic sort of spacing so that it's centered. In this case, MX Auto, that's what they're doing there, centering this block. So it's kind of a new way to create a block. Here's how you're doing a stacked and a horizontal stack as well item. So just a new layout trick that is a shortcut for laying out components a lot quicker, rather than having to think about, oh, I need a grid item here with this many columns. You're now able to just sort of say, hey, I'm going to lay something out, a horizontal or a vertical stack with these many items. This is how much room I want in between. That's pretty slick. Simple little tiny change are the best. And then looks like there's a bunch of different variables which allow you to control the styling of things. So that's cool. Control the styling of the body. You have a BS body font family. You know, isn't that 90% of the time I end up trying to override like the body text? So it's nice for them to add a variable to do it a lot quicker. And lots of other ones, font size. So I mean, this is very, it's tiny, but it's very helpful. It's going to really change the way that really it's going to help you not have to create a lot of, or a very large style sheet for every page that you do. Because what do you do when you go to a website and you can tell immediately that it's a Bootstrap site just because of the way that it looks. So by giving you all these variables, you'll be able to create sites that don't necessarily by default look like the standard Bootstrap site with different fonts. By setting all your things in the body pretty quickly, that is pretty nice. So background utilities and text utilities. So this refers to like the context, essentially the color. It's going to let, I don't know exactly what it does yet. I am just getting to look at these. So also additional variables, I guess, to control the background color and background and text color of items. So that is pretty cool. Look at that. So you can be very specific, or more specific than you were before. So additional text opacity 50, 25. That's nice. I mean, if you look at something like Tailwind CSS, Tailwind gives you a crazy amount of options on how to style your text. So they're adding a few more. Hopefully, it's not going to make this thing too much bigger. So look at that, border utilities, and I'm not really sure. We've expanded. Oh, so there's like a lot more examples. That's one of the beautiful things about the new Bootstrap. There's a page called examples, and it has, every once in a while you wanted to create something. So for example, one of the things that they have removed is the hero component. Oops, not hero. So since they removed it, how would you build one? This page kind of gives you just the code to make a specific thing. So it's just a page full of examples. One of my favorites here is one. So here's, for example, another component that was removed was this Jumbotron. So they give you a couple of pieces of code here that you can use to create that. Look, a nice login screen here. So there is here it is. It's called a cheat sheet. So this is a great page that has all of the different Bootstrap components and lets you go directly to the documentation. This is another sweet little addition just to the website. Yeah, so I'm liking everything that I see. And there's a lot of other little things. Reverted the ability for the column classes to override. It's good. Costs a lot of bucks. Get rid of bugs. Here's the new opacity utility. So 0, 25, 0.575, and 1. Let's see. Plugins now accept arguments of different types. All right, I don't even know what that means, so I'll have to look it up. Like I mentioned, I'm just sort of reading this after freaking out that I'm going to have to redo or add some things to the course that I just finished. I decided I would just drop down in here and kind of go over it with you. Updated JavaScript plugins, just major cleanups here. Nothing too interesting there. New Sass maps for all colors to combine Sass maps. I'm not sure what this means. So I guess lets you merge. So this is, in the Sass version of Bootstrap, you can create your own custom colors. So I usually use purple a lot, but they don't really have like a, there's like primary, secondary, danger, and the other colors. There's not like a purple color, so I usually create like a royal color. So this is perhaps a way of allowing you to combine Sass maps together. This might make that a little bit shorter. Data dismiss can be outside of modal. Oh, okay, that's so. And a modal, usually the data dismiss allow you to close a modal, which is like a pop-up that appears on screen. So I didn't know that you can dispose of a modal outside of its current, I guess, area. So this, I guess that's good. Toasts change how timings and classes get toast. This looks like a bug fix here. Shift tab keyboard support for modal. So I guess you can tab through. So you used to be able to tab forward through, keyboard support, tab forward through things. So this is going to let you go back in addition to going forward. Rename build tools, not a big deal. Manipulator, offset, and scroll spy to improve scroll position. There, I have no idea. Don't even know. Manipulate. So offset usually was when you create a scroll spy, keeps track of your scrolling on an element, so that like when you scroll, you'll see like different sort of things highlight. As you go through navigation on a very long page, it would highlight the element. And one of the things that was a pain was controlling the fact that sometimes your layouts are not at the top of the page, they're offset by a little bit. That happened a lot. And when you take a menu and you position it fixed at the very top, all of a sudden, since it takes it out of the context of where it was, you kind of have to offset the scroll spy by like 50 or 60 pixels, depending on the height of your navigation, to make sure that it went somewhere. So this is obviously a change in that variable. Maybe it'll make it easier to do that, because sometimes you have to go through some and knowing things to get the proper offset. And really, why do you even have to type in an offset? It should sort of know that you have replaced the menu in that case to a fixed position. So that looks like that's pretty much it. That's all the changes in this new version. Hello, people. There's like a few people on the stream, but I don't see any specific questions. Thank you, Okeda. Nice to see you. And hello, Jackie. Always awesome. Thank you so much. That's very cool. Yeah, simple, cool. I, love Bootstrap. I'm a big fan. And no, I did not put on this shirt. I actually was wearing this shirt. Actually, hold on. I was wearing a different shirt, but I originally had gotten this shirt, and then I switched to the other shirt for a meeting. But then when that meeting was over, I actually put this thing back. And so, yeah, you can buy those shirts somewhere on the site. So the blog is probably where you can find this on their site. But anyways, yeah, good. Darn, I missed the beginning. Hey, don't worry, Jacob. So darn, I missed the beginning. Don't worry, Jacob. All this is going to be recorded, and you'll be able to, once this is over, you'll be able to rewind and fast forward to whatever you want. Also, I do have, I tend to simulcast everything on my YouTube channel. So it's like youtube.com, I think /planet of the web. So this is being simulcast here, which honestly, sometimes it's a little bit easier to find things on YouTube. So that's another place that you can go. But for the next, just if you go to my stream on LinkedIn, so linkedin.com/n/planet of the web is where my profile will be. And this is sort of cool. My stream should be appearing right here. This is very meta. So when you're streaming, you can see that the stream will appear at the top of your profile. Super cool. That's pretty snappy there. So you can see it if you go to my profile. I think there's a place here called activity. That's a good place to find. So you can see here that the top of my activity happens to be this live stream. The thing about LinkedIn is that it dynamically will continue to add things. And as I post often, you might be able to have a hard time finding this in the future. But if you're just wondering where it is right now, it's at the top of my activity right now. Oh, let's see. All right. So do you have a Bootstrap 5 with Sass? I don't. I do have a Bootstrap 4 with Sass. I would love to do another one. I'm just getting sort of ready to plan out what I'll be doing next. The way that I do the courses, they're all planned out until like the first quarter of next year. And things, I have the most chaotic schedule. It's like playing a game of Tetris, but live. So I don't exactly know what order things are going to come out, but I would love to do one on Bootstrap 5. It's different enough. I mean, it's certainly tons different, and I would love to get into some of these ways of doing it. I'll probably do some sort of Ray stumbles through updating his website with the Sass version of Bootstrap 5.1. I think it would be at least hilarious. Like when I don't know if you've seen the other episodes of the Toolbox, but I did this one where I took the I took this JavaScript is nuts test, and that was hilarious. So that would be awesome. Yeah, if I don't see any questions, I wasn't planning on doing this at all, but I think I did the last Toolbox episode maybe a week or so ago. So I really am trying to do these weekly, but it was a perfect opportunity to sort of discuss the new things in Bootstrap. And you're really getting a very raw version of this. Normally, I would have planned so many other things. So it's super raw, super live. So go check out my course on Bootstrap 5. It is available. It's not going to be this version of Bootstrap. Let's see. But I'm pretty proud of this course. So go check it out. I have like over 100 different code pens where you can practice with me. So there's an example of what they look like. I'm actually showing you like every feature of Bootstrap, and I usually have a code pen associated with it. So go check that out. And I will see you hopefully soon.